I get excited by fresh fish. I love the theatre of running a restaurant. I've met so many really interesting, cool and different people, and it's something I love.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Australia is blessed with some pretty extraordinary seafood, but there's a real art to cooking it right. There are few people on the planet with a seafood culinary nous as today's guest, who's carved out over 3 decades at the helm of one of Australia's most awarded seafood restaurants. It's an honour to welcome Stephen Snow, or as we know, Snowy, co-owner of Finn's Restaurant and Finn's at Plantation House, to the show. Snowy, how are you, mate?
Huck, I'm great. That's very kind, mate. Thank you for that.
Well, it's not just me that thinks that. It's you've had an extraordinary career with a restaurant that's much loved by so many people. How are things going up there at the moment?
You know what? The go is Finn's always pulls a bigger crowd than, say, other ones around that I'd expect. But at the moment, like everyone else, in the depths of winter, and there seems to be some economic thing that's impinging on a lot of people, it's certainly harder than it has been.
You've been in Kingscliff for over 3 decades now, or you've had Finn's for that long. What drew you to that area? Why did you open restaurants sort of in that part of Australia?
Right. Well, my great-grandfather was the mayor of Bangalow when Byron Bay was just an outpost. There's a J.G. Snow Bridge over the Byron Creek at Bangalow, the A&I Hall at the showgrounds there. Well, that's all my family. So we have been a long time from here. My great-grandfather and them, they had a shoe shop and a general store in the main street of Bangalow. And my family was all based around here. But I was born on the Gold Coast at Southport because there was a building boom on at the Gold Coast, and my mum was a school teacher and my father a builder. So we moved up to the Gold Coast so my dad could build, and I was born in that time at Southport. However, to finish the question, then we went back down to Sydney because my father's brother had an accident, and we went down there to help rehabilitate him. So I ended up going to school in Cronulla, and then thereafter went to uni and started doing business and law and became a fish cook, and moved back to where I was meant to be, which was the North Coast, where all the family was from, and haven't looked back. Started in, first one was, we were in Rose Bay for a while in Sydney, and that was in the days of Leo Schofield, and Leo wrote us up as the best pub food he'd had in Sydney at that stage, and then it all went really good, but I just, I don't know, I just yearned to be back on the North Coast, so I spent my time there, and then came back up here and opened at the Railway Friendly Bar, but I've left a lot out in the interim. I worked on fishing boats in France, and I did a whole heap of other stuff that drew me to seafood. But the reason why I'm on the North Coast because I love it and the family connection, and I've told you that in a convoluted way.
Yeah, yeah. There is so much to talk about because you've had such a rich career. Tell us about food in your family sort of growing up. Did it play a big role in your family?
Big. I don't think there's a cook out there that didn't have a mum, or a chef out there that didn't have a mum that was a very good cook. I think it's something genetic. Like I say, I started off, first of all, my mum grew up in Lahore in Pakistan, which is now known as Karachi, in the days of old India and that. And then she was sent out here on a boat when she was 17 with a little brother 15 at the time of the partition. And my mother had a major influence on my life. I grew up, because she was part Pakistani, I grew up eating a whole heap of things like curries and whatever. And I remember taking them to school, and the other kids would go, "Oh, what is that?" And I'd look at their sandwiches, and they'd have this luminous pink thing with tomato sauce. I think it was known as Devon and gear like that, and camp pie. And I'd look at theirs and go, "Oh, what's that?" And so I've always grown up with spices. I've always grown up with a mum who cooked. I'd go to soccer or football or whatever code I was playing at that stage, and I'd come home after practice, and I'd love helping my mum make cakes, make tuna pies, make curries, make things like that. So I had a really interesting childhood in that we ate across a whole heap of different countries.
You briefly mentioned about business and law being the direction you went in originally. Tell us about that period of time. Why did you head down that track, and then what lured you into kitchens?
Right. The reason why I did business and law was because my mother was an extraordinary lady. When she came out with a younger brother, and she was 17 and him 15. Imagine coming to a place called Australia, sent out without your parents to look after, and they were pretty well to do in Pakistan, so she was set up with a house and whatever, and went to teachers college. So she went to teachers college and ended up being a headmistress of a school and all of that, like self-made, really well done. And because when I was at school, many of my reports had unsatisfactory, easily distracted, and things like that. But I came good right at the end in year 12 because apparently I always had brains and I just didn't show it up until then. And I got into law. And my mum, who was a natural high achiever, said, "Well, Stephen, the only thing harder to get into at that stage was medicine." She said, well, fabulous. You've come first in the school in English and you've been accepted into law and all of these kind of things." So I went there and started doing commerce and law, but I never had any discipline. I didn't turn up to lectures on Friday nights because I'd go and watch punk bands or do whatever I'd do. And so I remember them calling out the roll saying, "Is there anyone's name we haven't called here?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, that'd be me." So I put my hand up and said, "Yeah, no, haven't called my name." They go, "Oh, we thought you left after the 6th week." Anyway, so I decided I'd leave commerce and law, my parent, or especially my mum, was filthy on me. So I went to UTS and did a business degree and took all my electives out of the law faculty, and started off doing commerce. Started off in at Nestle as a product manager and a creative guy and whatever, and I'd check the legalities and design ads and do creative stuff. But I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but it was sort of a company that I read a bit about and went, "Oh no, what am I doing?" And then I thought, "Oh, I've only got." They were saying that I was really really good and really creative and all of that, and I was on heaps of bucks, and they had a career for me. But personally I was thinking, you know what, all I've really got to look forward to is a coffee at 10 a.m. This isn't for me. So while I was there was a guy there who was the chef for Maggi, who would develop all their recipes. And he went off and opened up a restaurant in Surrey Hills in Sydney. And he called me and said, "Hey, Snowy, I used to love what you do at Nestle. Would you come and do the marketing and the business and whatever for me?" And anyway, I said, "Well, yeah, sure." And he was a development chef for Maggi. So we opened this restaurant called Chez Gourmet. Don't ask me about years, I'm so bad, but long ago. Uh, and I would do entrees and do things like that, and Michael would do the cooking. And he was a very good cook. And then after a while, Michael was gay, so Michael said, "Well, hey, I want to hang at home with Ross and I want to do my stuff here and that. And him and I weren't particularly getting along, which seems to be, if I'm not the boss, I usually get sacked. So what happened was I did the night thing, and then a lady by the name of Valerie Lawson from the Herald went to all the restaurants in Crown Street, and she said, she wrote an article that I recall was titled Crown Street, Some Cute Names and Some Good Food. And in it she said, I had an outstanding dinner at this place called Chez Gourmet of an evening. And then suddenly a whole heap of people started coming in, and the reason why I left doing law and business and all of that was because of Michael. But then the reason why I continued my career was because she said fabulous food, the best in Crown Street and whatever. And thereafter I thought, well, you know what? I actually love cooking, because cooking, you don't do it for the bucks. You do it because you love it. You've got to have a passion, and because I surf a lot, my other passion was being near the ocean and seafood. Just love fish, love everything from the ocean, love everything to do with the ocean. So I thought I'd combine the two, and that took me to France. After cooking for a while here and then the Rose Bay one, Leo came after the Valerie Lawson one and said, this is the best pub food in Sydney. And I can't remember the name of that article, but I remember it. You know, we had people lining up out the back of the Rose Bay Hotel, whereas before it was considered, I know it's a Rose Bay Hotel, was considered really rough. No one would eat there. And then suddenly we had all the socialites lining up and to get a table in my restaurant and things like that. So it was sort of really, really funny. And I ended up just quitting that and going, I'm going to go back to the North Coast. And at that stage, before I did that, I decided I'd go to France and cook in France. And so I went over there, and first up I went surfing in Portugal and whatever, and met a girl who was later to become my wife. But while I was there, I said, well, hey, I'm going over to cook in France. And then over in France, I cooked at a place called La Bracon in Lacanau, because I always cooked near the ocean and where the surf was. And that was good for a while, but like most of the jobs when I don't run them, that ended because the head chef was, I'd sleep in a tent in this caravan park thing, and in the pouring rain and in winter and whatever, and I'd get up at 5 something to get to work to make stuff and whatever, and I liked it. It didn't matter. I was happy in doing that and cooking, but my only problem was the head chef was a weightlifter, and he used to just, at the end of every night, he'd go, oh, kangaroo and me in an arm wrestle. And it was like, oh, no, not this thing again. And I kept going, mate, you're the winner. Like, whatever, you're a weightlifter, great. And he'd be saying things like, and with that said, I love French people. I'm going there in 4 months. My business partner's French, so let me preempt that I employ French people whenever they come anywhere near me. But at this stage, it was a pretty ordinary start to engage in understatement. And he challenged me to an arm wrestle in front of everyone at the end, and he'd win every time because, of course he would. He's a weightlifter and all of that. But I remember he kept giving me a hard time because French, then, I was doing something like 16 hours or whatever and earning not much, but the madame and monsieur always asked me to cook their fish. They said, can you ask the kangaroo to cook our fish, because we love how he cooks the fish. And so I'd cook their fish, and the head guy couldn't stand me, and he kept giving me a really hard time. And I remember one day after months of working there, and, he put me on dessert so I wouldn't be anywhere near the fish. And I was making the desserts, and all the desserts sold out from the display, and everyone's happy and whatever. Probably about the only time I've ever forteed in desserts, I've got to admit. But so anyway, he was harassing me, and it got vaguely heated, and I said, well, if you don't shut up, I'm going to throw this at you. And he didn't, so I threw the pastry at him. And he, let's say he hit the roof and tried to remove my head forcefully. And this was in the middle of service. Well, there's no other way to put it. I clobbered him, and that was it. And so I thought, oh, okay, well, this isn't going to last. So I said, righto, well, I'll leave. I shouldn't tell you the real story, should I? This is the real story, but probably I should have censored it somewhat. But anyway, he said, I just said, look, I'll leave. But the madame and monsieur said, no way, we want you to stay. We want you to cook the fish and do that and the other. And I said, but I can't work with this guy, and he's not going to work with me because I've just clobbered him. And so what happened was they said, look, we'll put you on our fishing boat, because they had a fishing boat. And so then I was with the French lifeguards and that, and we'd set the nets at the back of the ocean, and we'd go out on the boat, and then we go and pick them up early the next morning and stand on the bow and pull the nets in with your bare hands, like not even gloves, because they were tough guys, and we'd pull in all this net, and then we'd take them to the back of the restaurant and we'd hang the nets up, and it'd have unreal fish like sole and turbo and libar and like a whole heap of amazing fish. But your hands would be like claws after a while from grabbing them out of the net and getting a spike here, a spike there. But I reckon that really fortified the fact that seafood's my go. I love it. I still love it. I get so excited by what fish come in. Whenever I go to Sydney or Melbourne or wherever, even I've done a World Gourmet Summit in Bangkok and whatever, I always fly now with my own fish. I take them, like even when I go down there I was cooking with, Neil Perry or Tetz or any of those guys, it was like, Snowy, you bring the fish, or Jeff Lindsay in Melbourne, or like any of them, wherever we'd go, because I've always been into fish. And so the first fins that I started after all of that was on the banks of, oh, sorry, I've missed out. After that I came back to Australia, came back to the North Coast. Tom Mooney, who had the Railway Hotel at Byron Bay, I showed him the reviews and that, and he said, oh, mate, he said, if you want to take on this little place, then yeah, sure. And then the railway went ballistic. It got so busy, and we came up with things like teriyaki burgers, and I cooked curries, and it really, really went well. So, Tom was wrapped, and it got a vague name around town as a place to eat in Byron Bay at that stage. And then John and Delvine, the Cornells, John and Delhi said, hey, Snowy, I was talking with them, and they said, look, we don't want to poach you or do stuff like that, but if ever, we're building a pretty handy hotel on the beach at Byron, and, just looking around. And I didn't do anything at that stage. I stayed at the railway. And I remember at the time, because all of us local guys from Byron thought, oh, no, check this out. The movie stars have come to town. They're going to spend something like $5 million or something like that on the Top Pub. And the Top Pub was a really rough and ready place in those days. Like the meat workers had, I don't know, come into the pub and just punch someone because they didn't like them. It was just ridiculous. It was like one of those. That's what's now the beach hotel at Byron Bay. And we'd all go, oh no, what are they spending that much money for? Well, the dumb movie stars who became extremely good friends of mine and still are, Johnny Corny's not with us anymore, but Del is. They ended up selling the pub for something like $65 million. So I know who was smart and who was dumb, and all of us imbeciles that were going, what are they doing spending, I don't know if it was 3 or 5 million. It was something that we just ran. Is he going to spend that on the Top Pub? Like, what do you think? You'll get that back? Well, stand corrected. But anyway, so then I went and cooked at the Brunswick Heads Hotel with John and Deli, and that went really well, and it was busy as and all of that kind of stuff. And while I was there, I thought, you know what? I saw this restaurant, and it was bankrupt. It had a bad reputation. It had been shut for about 9 or 12 months. And anyway, I spoke to a few people and they said, no, don't do it, Snowy. The place is jinxed. It's like, no way. Everyone goes broke there. And, you know, there's been about half a dozen people, and it was called Finn's. But I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to have a go. So I bought the place, not the freehold. I bought the business with everything in it for $8,000, and it was on the banks of the Brunswick Heads River, and it was cool. It was a good restaurant, and we got in, and my then wife, because I've changed wives, I've got a real good one at the moment, just by the way. My then wife was Portuguese, and so what we did, we got in there and we cleaned it up, and we did what we could, and we didn't have much money or anything, but we did it up, and it was quiet for about a year or two. It was just, it was sort of a destination. You had to drive there and do things like that. And what I liked was I got really good fish from the co-op there, from Brunswick Co-op, and I remember fish like cobia and that, and no one else really knew about the fish, and it'd go for $2.20 a kilo. I'd be buying, fresh cobia for, and, things like pippies and like octopus and gear. Like the only guys I'd be bidding against for that was the guy from the bait shop, because no one else wanted octopus, no one else wanted squid. In fact, people complained that, they said, how can you sell bait in your restaurant? And that was in the early days, and it was like pippies or something like that. And, it's pretty hard to explain to a rock ape why you'd sell bait. And I tried and it didn't work. So they just didn't come, and other people came. But probably the thing about fins at Brunswick Heads was one day there was one of my waiters there, his name was Ned. Ned came into the restaurant, and we used to do a Sunday lunch. And to cut to what it really was, I used to go home and drink Pinot Noir and do things like that. And Sunday was the one, because I'd sort of be celebrating the end of a week, Saturday, and I knew I just had Sunday to go. But for some reason, I used to never feel any good rocking up early, because the only time I did a lunch, because I do night stuff. But I used to love the food as it would look with a light and with things like that when I would turn up and cook for a Sunday lunch and run my restaurant Fins. So, and I remember one day Ned came in and Ned said, hey, Snowy, said, there's a guy out there that said he reckons that's the best fish he's had forever, or some like really outrageous statement. He'd like you to go out there and have a drink with him. And I said, oh, look, Ned, I'm ordinary, mate. Tell the guy I'm really happy. He had a really good fish. That's just cool. That's wonderful. But, mate, I want to get out of here. And Ned came back and said, Snowy, the guy said his name's Terry Durack, and he just wanted to say that that's the best fish him and Jill have had outside a capital city anywhere, or like a really big statement. I went, oh, fuck. So I went and I looked, and I went to the window to look out, and Terry and Jill are so obvious. They're like big, and they're, all that. My staff didn't have a clue. And I went, oh no, I wonder if abject grovelling will help. So I've gone out there going, oh, the bit about like Agent 80s. I hope I wasn't out of line with a bit I didn't want to drink. Love drinking, yeah, really into it. Let's go, and went out and they were cool. No going, those are very good, and so they're really kind and good and wonderful people. Anyway, they wrote it up in the Herald and, that's how it seems to go. And I don't know how many bookings. I think we got 800 bookings, and then everyone had come from colourful racing identities to the Packers, the Cornells, the people that had sold whatever they'd grown out the back of yonder and got a whole heap of money, and they'd shout their friends and, whatever. It was just it was kind of like Barrowa Waters, but on the north coast. It was a very funny restaurant. And, people, like, I remember I cooked some things with an octopus, and one of the guys got part of the octopus and had a fishing line, threw it on his line. The next thing, this is the octopus that we'd cooked and served. He's running around the restaurant, the outside of Finn's, with a massive flathead that he caught off the octopus. Well, it's fresh, mate. And there was all radical stuff happened in that restaurant. I remember, there was one time there was a fisherman I knew banging on the back door in the middle of service on a Saturday, and we were busy because after this we were always booked out, and it was great. The restaurant went unreal, and it was so out of the way. It was a destination. And they're knocking on the door, and I'm going, who's knocking on the door? And went to the back door, and there's some fishermen I knew, and they go, "Can we see Snowy?" I said, "Mate, tell him to take a jump." We were in the middle of service. Said, "No, we really need to see him." I went, "Oh, yeah, right, okay." So I went there, and they said, "Mate, we've got a dead guy in our fishing boat." I went, "What?" They go, "We've got a dead guy in the fishing boat." And I've gone, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Is he dead?" And they go, "Look, can we, because we had an outside section right on the river. And they said, can we bring him in and put him out, in essence, which was the outside section of the dining room that's packed with people?" I've gone, "Well, no, the guy's dead, yeah?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, you can't bring him and put him in the middle of my restaurant. Go away, go to the jetty down there. Or if he's alive, let's go. But if the guy's dead, we can't do anything, eh?" And that was in the middle of service. Pretty wild stuff happened there. And then while I was there, John and Delvine and Ginge and whoever else, they used to come by, and Corny said, "Hey, mate, come and we've set up the beach hotel," and I knew about it. "Come and run our restaurant down there. We love the fish and love the food and whatever." I said, "No, you guys are nice guys and you come here and I'm really happy here." So I said, no, it's okay. Let's see what happens later or whatever. But I didn't say I wanted to do it. And then thereafter, I think, we won the best seafood restaurant in New South Wales, and they flew me to Sydney, and we got up on stage, and the Premier was shaking my hand, and he was saying how wonderful, first time anyone out of Sydney's won this, and it's so wonderful for regional unemployment and all of that stuff. And at that stage I was actually writing for Fairfax, for the Herald, and doing the Good Weekend and writing for Whoever Asked Me, because that was the law background. They said they'd give me a ghostwriter, and I said, "Well, just give me a go." And they go, no, mate, not a hope, you're a chef. And anyway, I wrote for them for 10 or more years, and, because they said, "Gee, okay, you can write." So that worked. And what was I? Oh, yeah, we went to Sydney, and they're shaking hands and doing all those kind of things. And then when I got back, they announced that they were putting the Pacific Highway through the restaurant. And I went, "Really, what's wrong with this picture?" And not only that, we were going to get the boot. And I started to say, well, hold on, guys, you can't do that. I'm the same guy. Remember the guy we were pumping hands on stage and everyone was happy, and the bit about regional unemployment and how good it is and all of that stuff. And they said, no, sorry, mate, you're out. And I've gone, wow. So I started the media because I was part of it. They started to want to do stories and whatever. And, I said, well, no way, this can't be right. And people were interviewing me, and they have a media monitoring service with the government and whatever. And so they contacted me and said, hey, look, just come and talk to us then, let's talk. And I thought, well, okay, well, that's a start because, I understood the highway was going and there was nothing, a little restaurant like Finn's was going to stop. So I thought, righto, and all I wanted was, I just wanted that they didn't kick me out and I had nothing, because I had staff and I had things like that. And plus we'd become a really good restaurant. We were busy and people were coming from Sydney, High Court, everyone was coming from everywhere to try the restaurant. And they were loving it, and they couldn't believe it was like this little bomb shelter on the banks of the Brunswick River, but it had pretty handy food. And so anyway, I went to Sydney and I said, well, hey, I'm not a gold digger, but guys, I got to pay these people. I'm suddenly out of a job. I've built this restaurant from a bankrupt place. I've been here now 5 or 6 years. It's starting to go good. Now you're going to shut me down when I've just won the best in New South Wales or stuff like that. So then they said, righto, well, what we'll do, we'll get a valuation and you get a valuation, and we'll meet halfway. And I thought, righto, well, that's okay, that's good. And they gave me their valuation, and I went, I don't think I'll bother getting one. I'll run with your one. So that's how I moved from there. And then at that stage, Corny said, well, what about now, mate? And I said, well, yep, let's go. So I went to first of all, I went and hung out with John and Delv, and I went over to sort out a restaurant in London that they asked me to go and sort out. But anyway, I'm over there. John and Delvine got me from the airport and said, Snowy, what are you doing here? And they already signed with us. And I said, I was just going to sort out this restaurant. They've offered me a heap of bucks to do. Anyway, we went to the restaurant. I won't name it. And John and Delhi booked it, and I went with them. And while we were there, Corny goes, expletive deleted. You've got a lot of work to do here, mate, haven't you? And I've gone, yep, no, a lot. And then he said, well, how about if you don't take this job? Delhi and I have got a couple of apartments on the Thames. You can have one and we'll have the other. And how about we just go and discover the best restaurants in Europe? So I wrote my Dear Sir Terence letter, and I decided not to take the job and to hang out there. And we went to all sorts of great restaurants together, and I learned a real lot from John Cornell, as in, like, how to be a wonderful, well, I'm not saying I'm a wonderful human, but I rate him as one, and but also how to conduct business in a way that, he'd say, mate, I could screw everyone for price because I'm big, but then they're all going to hate me and they're all going to not. And so he would always pay what's fair. He would always do what's fair, and things like that were really, really an eye-opener, because I was used to everyone trying to wrangle people to the bottom cent so they could make bucks and that, and he didn't have that. And he was very generous and would give and highly successful and understated. He would say, I want to surround myself with geniuses and be the dumbest guy in the room or the most inept in the room. And just by saying that is living proof that he was a brightest. He's just so I learned a lot from him, and then I came back and ran the beach hotel, and I think we won the best in Australia with one lot, and we won the best regional with Fairfax. I think we won that about 7 times, best regional restaurant, and a lot of times in a row, and 2 hats and 1 hat and all of that kind of stuff. And then when after that, John and Delhi said, "Well, we're going to sell the pub, mate, and you've been awesome, and the restaurant's just great. How about we write you into the contract?" And I said, "Oh, Corny, don't do that, because if I don't like the new people, I don't want to be in a contract." And exactly what he said was, "For fuck's sake, mate," he said, "anyone else would have been so thankful to me for considering to keep." And I go, "I don't care, Corny, not me, mate. I don't want to be there." And then I didn't like the new people, so I quit. And I ended up in the people up at Salt, where I am now, said they used to come into the restaurant and ask how could they get a Fins up there. They've just redeveloped and whatever, and I hadn't even been there. But at that stage, I thought, I better go and have a look at that place that they're offering. So I went up there, and that's where the restaurant is now. Plus, we have a wedding venue at Tropical Fruit World at the back that's a stunning view, and we just do top-end weddings they're seriously good weddings. I love doing that. And our restaurant now is just great. It's the most professional we've had as a restaurant. But the funny thing is, once we move out of Byron, no one comes and sees you anymore. Not that, this is the busiest restaurant I've had, and it's the busiest restaurant in the area. But so, if they want to come or they don't come, it's whatever. But it's really good. It's a great restaurant, and I've got the thing that's kept me going over this 33 years of running restaurants. When I reckon if you're still standing after 5 years running a restaurant, I reckon that's not too bad. So I'm going to claim 33 years.
You've won so many accolades, and 3 decades running, amazing restaurants. What is the key to that sort of longevity? How do you stay in business that long?
You know what? There was times when I just actually was going to give up because it was just too hard running a regional restaurant in the country. And I remember one time my accountant saying to me, "Snowy, you got a television show, you're right, you're this guy that..." I never tried to be that. I just wanted 30 bums on seats from when we started. But anyway, I kept finding myself running after the restaurant. But he said, "But you don't make any money, mate. It's hopeless, It's like..." And, I was supposed to have a business degree and a sub-major in law, and, there was supposed to be some brains there somewhere. And I was certainly cook, and everyone loved that. And whenever I cooked something, they all jumped up and down and said, "That's outrageous." And, that was all good, but I couldn't make any bucks. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to have to put my prices up, because I was too scared to do that. And I've just got to have to change. And then anyway, I did that, and the restaurant got busier. I did it again. The restaurant got busier. Then I started to make a living and make some bucks. And I reckon perseverance is really important. I reckon having, I'm so inept, ordinary at a whole heap of things, but I can write and I can cook. So I just write and I cook, and they're the things that worked for me. And then, the restaurant started to go, but it was perseverance, because I should have given up. I couldn't make any bucks. I was supposed to be this person, but, if you looked at the bank account, I was a loser. So, there's the glass and mirror stuff. But then it started to go good, and then I was a guest chef all over the place. Important also, business, having an understanding too. my wife has a degree in fine arts, and she can paint like you wouldn't believe. She's like ducks of us. It's just brilliant. Really, really smart girl. But she can make the buck stick way better than me with a business degree. I tend to give people and this and that, whereas she's more protective of the nest. So the first time I started to actually make some buck stick was when I was with Morgan in the Byron Bay days. So I think to have a really good partner who may have a strength that you don't have, but perseverance, you just can't give up. You've got to really have a goal. I remember even at this stage, what I wanted to do was when I first opened and I wanted to open a seafood restaurant. I recall it, at that stage there was always like a red meat, a white meat, a chicken, and never really vegetarian and token seafood. And I remember saying to people, I'm going to open a seafood restaurant. They go, well, what do you mean? Like, you mean just all seafood, like the whole menu, seafood and stuff? Like, instead of just one? I said, yeah, like all the entrees, all the mains, and, dessert won't be that, but yeah, that's what it's going to be. And they're going, wow, really? How can you even think up enough things to put on a whole menu just with seafood? And anyway, that was also one of the best things I've ever done. Run as a seafood restaurant, not try to be all things to all people. I reckon that was pretty major. And then, I guess guest cooking and being able to write something or whatever was also pretty handy and helpful.
At the top of the show, you sort of mentioned the current sort of climate and the challenges for hospitality. What do you think's a way to get through this period of time?
It's cyclical. It goes. You've just got to try and do what you can when it's pretty hard. And I know in this area at the moment, there's a lot of cafes, a lot of restaurants that are hurting. It's really tough at the moment. 2 years ago, like we were booming. We were totally booming. 1 year ago, we were pretty well booming. And now it's a hard time. You've just got to stick it out because it's cyclical. Next thing, it'll go up again. It's a lot to do with interest rates and whatever, and you keep taking money from people and there's none left for them to spend on discretionary things like cafes, restaurants, and, retail and whatever else. But I would say stick to your guns. Pull it in. You can't afford to carry staff and whatever like you could before. Really hard. It's hard. There's no doubt about it. It's just in all this time, all I've learned is perseverance, and we keep reinventing ourselves too. That's probably another thing. We have pop-up restaurants, so I go in as a guest chef in Portugal. I've been in the Basque region the last, we did 6 months in La Rioja in Spain, and with Telmo Rodriguez, who's a superstar winemaker over there. And we lived in 11th century monk's cottage, and all that's a different story. But what they did, we had Tapas magazine cover it and someone shooting it and whatever. And we were in 11th century monk's cottage. I took my wife and my youngest daughter, Nevada, and we lived there. And then Telmo would say, righto, Snowy, we're going to bring in the best chefs in Spain and see how you go against them. And in that Basque region, I think we had Mr. Number 3 in the world. We had the guys from Etxebarri. We had Elcano. We had Miguel and Abel from like all the best restaurants there. And we'll see how you go. And because he'd put on big lunches in the winery and, the magazines and whoever had come. And it was wonderful. What an experience, And so Mr. Number three in the world would come, and he'd have his entourage of chefs, his parillas, he'd have his own fish, he'd have all of that kind of gear. And in the other corner, for want of a better word, was myself and Morgan, my wife. And like I said, my wife's she's great. I'm not saying that to stay married. I actually think it, like she's actually real good by any measure, really bright, all of that. She can do heaps and heaps of things. Thank heavens I got her for the business, but she's a shit cook. So at the end of the day, it was Morgan there helping me, and she's going, darling, this and that, and we're cooking. But wow, what a great experience. And the guys were great. All these Spanish guys were amazing, and Telmo and them were wrapped, and we'd have the guys that owned all the law firms in Spain or the Dominican Republic, like all sorts of people, and, a whole heap of different gear, and we'd be cooking at the winery. So I learnt a lot in that time, and a lot of the dishes that have gone on at Finn's are a result very often of because it was incumbent on me to cook staff dinner for everyone at the end, and a lot of the times, like our fisherman's rice, our calderada, which is on our menu now, all of those were born from things I would cook to have with all the chefs, where they go, wow, everyone loved it. And they were going, this is kind of Spanish, but not really. It's this and that, because I just make the things up. And a lot of these things are on the menu now. So, and then we've come back and run, I've got a Basque pop-up at the moment, because last year I cooked in Biarritz and around there, so I've done the Spanish side and the French. I don't just open a thing like sometimes people go, oh, I'm going to be Mexican now, but they don't, I only do it when I've actually cooked and done and worked, otherwise I don't understand why I would do it. But, so wherever we go and cook, we bring that, and it's another price point to Finn. So because, I would suggest we probably got the best warm water seafood in the world, and I've tried a lot. Like at Finn's now, we get outrageous fish. Like you should see the mulloway I got from Maluka yesterday that's on the menu now, a 4 kilo Maori cod, pearl perch, snapper, all line caught, brain spiked by people, but I pay them the right money. I don't meet too many fishermen that are like rolling in it, and their job's hard, so I fully respect their job, and a lot of them are mates of mine. And so we just display the fish out the front of the restaurant, unless we're that busy we've had to fill it at all, and people look at the fish, and it's really exciting, the seafood thing, the fish thing, and it's what's kept me interested, because, you got to have a passion. Without a passion, the best you can hope to be is a journeyman or something like that, or like people come in and, you have chefs, and every restaurant does, and some of them have got some talent, and, that's great, but, maybe they haven't got a whole heap of passion. And give me people with passion. I love it. You got to love it. You don't pick this business for, to be a millionaire or something like that. It's about love, and it's about respect for the produce. I got great Japanese staff, and it's things like that the theatre of restaurants is good. You need to like that. So yeah, the pop-up thing was a good thing, because then we got 2 price points.
There's one thing that I've learned over the years of knowing you, Snowy, is that you've always got a lot of yarns.
Yeah. Well, they're all true's a problem. A lot of them are not, I don't. They're like, that's what happens.
I think we might have to do a series with you to cover them all. But you've had an extraordinary impact. What do you love about what you do?
Like I say, I get excited by fresh fish. I love the theatre of running a restaurant. I like I've met so many really interesting, cool and different people. I cook for whoever headlined the blues festivals, so I've hung out in dressing rooms with some of the best. I've had a whole heap of them dine in the restaurant. I've had, famous ones, infamous ones. I just meet a whole heap of people, and if people find out you own fins, they open doors really easily. It's facilitated life, and it's something I love. Whereas I think had I remained in law and sitting in an office and doing that, I probably would have I wouldn't have drunk as good wine and maybe had an alcoholic habit or something. Who knows? Whereas now I'm I just love drinking really good whatevers and eating them with fish. And on my days off, I cook fish or I cook beef or I cook whatever. And, Morgan doesn't even look like cooking if I'm anywhere near the place. So fair enough. And I like it, so that's it.
Well, Snowy, you're an absolute legend, and it's an honour to get you on Deep in the Weeds today. We'll have to catch up and explore some of your stories down the track.
Good on you, Huck. Thanks for having me on, mate. Wonderful. Anytime you're anywhere near here, come by and say hi, because I've probably got a reasonable piece of fish and a decent glass of wine for you.
Mate, that's a big sell for me. That's like my dream meal. Please keep in touch, and we'll catch up again soon.
Yeah, good on you, mate. Go well.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we take a deep dive into the lives of the incredible people who ply their trade in the food and hospitality sector. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast, or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.